On the program today, we are focusing on the youth and substance abuse. I had quite an interesting discussion earlier on with Ryan Bryan, who is the managing director of ARC Addiction Recovery Center, as well as Brian Thomas, who is a recovering addict, and they shared with me their difficult yet inspirational journey, as well as the various forms of treatment available for drug addicts. Let's have a listen. Ryan and Brian, welcome to In Tune, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Eva.
Ryan, let's start with you. When we talk of substance abuse, what exactly are we referring to? And is alcohol and prescription medication also included in the term?
I suppose the term speaks for itself. Substance abuse is usually a precursor to addiction.
So addiction is what happens when you have been abusing for some time.
You know, that's something it's debated amongst recovery community and people in the know. You know, is it a case of nature or nurture? We believe that it's both. A person can be genetically predisposed to addiction, and they can cross the line into the dimension of addiction after excessive abuse.
Genetically predisposed to addiction. That must be quite a hard one then, as far as recovery is concerned.
My experience as an addict was that that's nothing that anybody could do really for me. You know, in terms of my parents trying to put blocks in place and the school trying to prevent it, so on and so forth. That process didn't really change the fact that I wanted to use drugs. You know, despite the education and the exposure that I had to information about the consequences of using drugs, it didn't really change anything for me personally.
So Ryan, when it comes to youth substance abuse, there seems to be, you know, no rhyme or reason to either the increase in the number of young South Africans who abuse drugs or even in the pattern of use. Can you just give us an overview on the prevalence of drug abuse in South Africa and which are the more popular drugs?
I know there's a new drug, well, it's not a new drug, it's a new term that I've recently become aware of. It's Niobe, I think it is, which if I'm not mistaken, is heroin mixed with
ARV drugs, yes, Niobe.
Yes,
and you know, wow, when the popularity of that drug has in fact soared.
Well, it would appear that Niobe is becoming very popular. Cat has become very popular over the last few years. Heroin, cocaine have always been very popular drugs. Alcohol, prescription drugs, you know, it's not really the drug of choice that defines the problem. It's really the person using the drug. The usage of the drug is really the symptom of the addiction.
Drug addiction in itself is only a symptom to underlying problems that a victim may be having? Possibly.
But as I said as well, it could just be in part of somebody's personality to use drugs and enjoy feeling high.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the number of South Africans who are either addicted or who abuse drugs on a regular basis.
As a treatment centre based in the East Rand, we have experienced many people coming to us, you know, saying that their children are addicted, and it's generally people between the ages of 14, youngsters 14 and 18 years old. So it's generally teenagers, although we have experienced that it affects people younger than that. Yeah, we have had reports of children in schools using cat particularly.
And when you say children, what age group are you talking about here?
Under 12. So yes, it is a problem, a big problem
throughout
in general.
The country,
yes, yeah.
Not just in the Western Cape as perceived. In fact, it's a global challenge. We'll talk more about that as well as the recovery process that you had to undergo to be the person that you are today. But first, let me welcome Brian Thomas as well. Brian, you are a recovering addict. How and when were you introduced to drugs?
I suppose we want to include alcohol and cigarettes as a drug. So I suppose I started smoking cigarettes at the age of 7, and that was I would say, an introduction to
7.
Yeah,
that must have been your first year at school, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it wasn't an introduction. It was a kind of a self. I explored myself, and it wasn't fun for me, and I didn't carry on doing that. But at a later stage, at 11, I was introduced to alcohol. and the effects were pleasurable to me. Now, I enjoyed them. I was around a different group of guys, and it gave me acceptance in that circle, drinking alcohol. The taste I did not like, but the feeling I did enjoy, and that was like the guarantee that I had. It wasn't a problem yet, but like anything, it progressed. The acceptance that I wanted again, it progressed to marijuana, and those are the things that I really did like, where I was introduced to the whole spectrum of drugs.
And how old were you by the time you were smoking marijuana?
I was 12. And the progression from there, I suppose, is that I got hooked onto Mandrax at 14 and then went on to crack at 15, and I was using intravenous heroin at the age of 16.
Now, what kind of heroin is that?
It's one that you would inject, okay.
So you were
there's just a
injecting-
method of using. One could snort it or smoke it or inject it. It's up to the individual, but I suppose with intravenous drugs, they work a lot harder and faster. I suppose the last step one would take when using drugs.
So you were injecting yourself at the age of 14?
No. I started using drugs at the end. I was injecting heroin at 16.
That's still very young. And just take us through the feeling of being high, Brian, because many people who've never taken drugs cannot comprehend that feeling. What can you compare the feeling to? What is it like? And is it really a physical feeling, or is it more a state of mind?
Okay. It's very hard to describe. It's like trying to tell someone who's never eaten chocolate cake before what chocolate cake tastes like. But I'm going to give you an instance of what happened in my life that could describe it. And I often tell guys can you remember your first lollipop? Can you remember the first time you had ice cream? I don't, but I can remember the very first time I picked up alcohol or marijuana or heroin. It had an impact on my life. And what happened is that I was sitting around the circle and I was using marijuana, and I said to my friends and my peers around me, I said, why don't religious leaders and politicians use this? Because I thought this solved all the problems in the world, and I was dead serious about it. That seemed to be the solution to my life in that point in time. There was euphoria, there was a tingling sensation. I felt at ease with myself for the very first time. There was no anxiety.
Cloud nine.
Yeah.
All the way.
Yeah. Each drug has its own effect, but ultimately I was solving the problem, which was me and my circumstances. Yeah.
You made quite a vital point when you said that you'll always remember the first time you picked up a cigarette, the first time you picked up a marijuana joint, because it had an effect on your life. So obviously risks are involved, and risks usually have many dimensions. What are the main risks that you experienced?
What of it is that part of my personality liked those risks, and that scene of it is that it was illegal. In terms of risks that I put myself, I was involved in things that were shady at the end, doing drug deals. I could have probably, acquiring drugs is illegal, using drugs is illegal. The stuff I did was really stupid at times. We're driving drunk, high, putting other people in danger. The decisions I made were impulsive at times.
Did you ever sell drugs as well?
No. But doing the drug deal, being on the consumer end of it, yes, I was that, yeah.
And what about things like your withdrawal symptoms and depression, and perhaps not even being as aspirational as you were when it comes to achieving your dreams, etc.?
Cool,
Did it have any impact on that?
Definitely. I left school at Standard 7. To take up drugging as a full-time career, as I saw it. Education stopped, work stopped, everything stopped, and drugs became the primary source of what I woke up for. The withdrawal symptoms of certain drugs, the ones I mentioned, the one heroin that I was injecting, became very severe. Is that once I would wake up, there would be extreme shakes, anxiety, muscular pain, all those very uncomfortable effects, like an extreme case of flu nearly.
And how did you deal with that?
The only way to deal with that is to use, because it'll take away those symptoms, and effectively it'll make you feel like I'm normal now. So at the end I was using not to get high, but just to calm those effects of the withdrawals.
Sure. Brian, I'm really, really fascinated by your story, but at the same time, so proud to see you being the clean man that you are. Look
Thank
at your
you.
skin, it's glowing. I could never believe that you were once an addict. What would you say are some of the factors that influence your addiction? I mean, were you having family problems at the time, or was it more a case of peer pressure?
I was living a good lifestyle. I think it was possibly more the peer pressure and wanting to belong, coupled with my naughty personality and possibly my addictive personality, which defined me as a drug addict. I would have probably fell in any circle that took me in, and the circle that did take me in were the drinking and drugging type.
And as with any habit, the addict has to feed their addiction. What were some of the drastic actions that you possibly resorted to in order to keep that habit alive and sustain the availability of drugs?
Theft was one of it, of possessions.
What did you steal and from whom?
Mostly from family and friends, and through cunning ways, not the aggressive type of way would be to steal the odd cell phone when someone's not looking. But as a drug addict, I took the softer targets, the ones that I knew that possibly wouldn't lead me to jail, or if I caught, I could probably get away with it. Manipulation, lying, any sort of method that I could use, credit, any way, that would take it there.
And you've been through recovery now. We'll talk about that in just a moment. There must have been a moment that brought you to that. What was the lowest moment for you? Did you ever have an epiphany where you thought, you know what, enough is enough? If I don't stop, I'll probably die.
Yeah. The strange thing is, I knew the things I was doing, you don't last long. But it never dawned on a reality. I knew it in the back of my mind. My end days, yes, I was using, and I think I was using just to keep those withdrawals up. And I think I was so physically ill is that I couldn't acquire the drugs as regularly as possible. I think the emotional pain, the fear, the anguish, the depression, all those type of things took me to a place where I couldn't quit by myself, but I was ready, emotionally and mentally to when I had the help.
So when you talk of emotional pain, you did experience depression even though you were high.
Yeah, severe.
What caused that? Because usually the perception is when you are high, you're happy and you're overjoyed and you're energetic and over the moon.
I think there's a progression in drug use. In the beginning is that you do really feel good. But what happens is like I described with the heroin use is that first I get high, I get a fantastic, relaxed feeling. But at the end, that relaxed feeling is no longer, and it goes on to the other side where I'm now tense, and I need to use a drug to feel normal, and the same as the withdrawal. So there's a progression. I get high to a certain level, and the next time it isn't that great. And then the next time, the more I use, I try to chase that initial or original feeling that I got, and I'm not getting there until I find out that I'm only using to feel normal. And it even goes worse than that, it digresses or gets worse.
And so when you decided to stop, was it your decision or did somebody else make that decision for you?
It was a combination. I did ask for help.
From
my parents, thank goodness.
Had they been aware?
Yeah, they were definitely aware for many years that I was a drug addict. They couldn't physically stop me. No one could. But they initially set the ball rolling. I didn't have the finances. I didn't have any means to help myself. I was fortunate enough to have that last chance from them, and they did offer that to me, and I got into a treatment center.
And that was the moment when you joined ARC, the Addiction Recovery Center?
No, that's when I went into treatment. There's been many years after that. We just
So what does that mean? You've had a couple of relapses?
Yeah. From the ages of 15 was my first treatment center.
Because I can imagine your parents dragging you to rehab,
they would.
Whether you wanted or not at that age.
Yeah, they did.
And obviously you were not ready to quit.
You see, that's the thing with drug addiction. You can put me anywhere and I'll still find a method of using it. It has to come from myself. The willingness or the need or the desire needs to be measured by me. No one else can make that decision for me. And there was many attempts to rehabilitate forcefully, like from my parents, by myself, but the final was when I described, because otherwise I went through numerous treatment centers and those type of I think me and Ryan have both suffered from the disease. The cool thing is that I know Ryan from high school, and I bumped to him along the way about 5 years ago when we were both freshly clean, 1 year. So I think Ryan was about 9 months, and it was like quite an emotional event because we both knew each other. And
So Ryan was 9 months clean?
I think so, and I was a year.
Wow.
I remember knowing Brian in active addiction. I thought I was different. I come from a wealthy background. I thought that because I had a car and I had a house and that my life was seemingly manageable, that I wasn't anything like Brian was. Brian he's taken it to levels that I never took addiction to. All I could look for was the differences when I was in active addiction. When I met Brian afterwards, when I was 9 months clean and Brian was about a year clean, I was very emotional about the fact that that I could see Brian alive still, because I didn't think Brian had long to go. But reality was, it was 5 years after I initially met Brian and used with him that I acknowledged that I had the exact same problem, that I wasn't different.
Of course.
Yeah.
Take us then through the treatment process, the program that you use, and what approach do you take when working with addicts?
First of all, ARC believes that addiction is a primary chronic and progressive illness. Okay, it's been considered a mental illness by associations like the World Health Organization, American Psychiatric Organization since the late 1950s, if I'm not mistaken.
Such as diabetes and depression, etc., etc.
Sure.
So you will always be a recovering addict.
That's it.
And does that also mean you will be taking the treatment for the rest of your life?
But part of the treatment process that we offer is we offer obviously an intervention. Okay, so the person comes into treatment and we expose them to the concept of managing their addiction for the rest of their life. So it's easy to stay clean in rehab or in treatment, but the process of recovery really begins when a person starts.
When they go back home. Tell us about the method then that you use to ensure that the recovery process is effective in the long term.
We have professionals that are involved, such as clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists, doctors, so on and so forth. And what these professionals do is they help with treating the symptoms associated with addiction. And they've gone through the process of having experienced addiction and are now experiencing and practicing a program on a daily basis that facilitates recovery. When I personally went to treatment, I was confronted with the reality of my behavior.
What happens in the first day when you wake up? Give us a scenario of a day in your life in rehab or a recovery center.
From rehab is I got woken up by a bell, which I wasn't very happy about, so we all waltzed out, and I kind of knew that I was the only one in my pajamas and everyone was dressed, that I was already doing something wrong, and it was time to eat breakfast. From there, I got into group therapy, which is a bunch of drug addicts with a counselor or a counseling psychologist or was a professional within the room, and we kind of express certain things or whatever the topic may be of that day. A lot of it involved one-on-one counseling and going to meetings, leaving the treatment center in the period of being in treatment, going to meetings, meeting other people like me, which made a huge impact because it made sense that someone like me was telling me what to do instead of someone who hasn't experienced it. You know what I mean? So it's walked in my shoes, and those were very important parts to me and my recovery, is that someone else like me was showing me the way.
I can imagine you've seen a couple of people lose their lives.
Yeah, we have. We have actually close friends as well.
Recently, yeah.
My word. Brian, you've lost friends as well?
Yeah, just recently a mate of ours went to a funeral about a month ago.
Did the person die from an OD?
Indirectly, he was using and he hanged himself.
Let's talk to friends or family members of an addict. What are the symptoms, the telltale signs to look out for?
I suppose redness of the eyes, sleeping in class, not attending classes at school.
Yeah, I mean, it's a change in behavior. So the guys it's with sleeping patterns, depending what drug it is. It might be oversleeping, undersleeping, not sleeping at all. Dilated pupils or some constricted pupils. So the pupils will be either very large or either very small. It's all depending on what type of drug you're using at the end of the day. But there's definitely a change in attitude. If there's a circle of friends, that might change. behavior, things going missing out of the house, not being in the house, changing the whole lifestyle basically, because that's what drugs do, is that they change the essence of who I am. You know, it's very hard to say because it depends on which type of drug the person is using. You know, there's some outward effects, you know.
Ryan, could you just give us, before we say goodbye, your contact details? How can anybody who's interested contact ARC Addiction Recovery Center?
All right, we've got a 24-hour helpline. It's a toll-free number. You can call us on 0800 My Rehab. So that's 0800 697 3422. You can also visit our website. It's www.myrehab.co.za. Or you can email me on ryan@myrehab.co.za.
Thank you very much. It's been quite an interesting conversation, and I've learned a lot. And that was Ryan Bryan, the Managing Director of ARC Addiction Recovery Center, as well as Brian Thomas, who is a substance abuse victim or recovering addict, sharing with us their fascinating stories of recovery. Well, that's all we have time for right here on Intune on SAFM 104 to 107. It has been a fantastic hour. Well, I'm back tonight on the Cradle between midnight and 4 a.m. I hope that you do enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Danza mami criolla, cola na mim, pensa na passata, non coladeira. Danza mami criolla, cola na mim, pensa na passata, non coladeira. Sabura ela na nos terra Cabo Verde, la nota sentina mei nos tradição. Sabura ela na nos terra Cabo Verde, la nota sentina mei nos tradição. Dança mami criolla, cola na mim, pensa na passada, não cola dela. Dança mami criolla, cola na mim, pensa na passada, não cola dela. Sabura ela na nos terra Cabo Verde, la nota sentina mei nos tradição. Sabura ela na nos terra Cabo Verde, la nota sentina mei nos tradição. Chega na mi bobeira tão forte que vamos sentir calor de bom morinha, o Cabo Verde. Chega na mi bobeira tão forte que vamos sentir calor de bom morinha, o Cabo Verde. Sabura ela na nos terra Cabo Verde, la nota sentina mei nos tradição. Sabura ela na nos terra Cabo Verde, la nota sentina mei nos tradição. Danza mami criolla, cola na mim, pensa na passada, non cola dela. Danza mami criolla,